Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another daily devotion. This devotion I am recording for broadcast on Friday morning of May 20th of 2022. We are looking at the 14th chapter of Matthew's Gospel currently. We just started the 14th chapter yesterday. Today we jump in at verse 13 and go to 21. We just got done with Jesus, with them telling Jesus about the death of John the Baptist, of him being beheaded. In fact, we ended with verse 12. His disciples came and took the body, it would be John's body, and buried him. Then they went and told Jesus. They went and told Jesus about John's death. And remember, John is, according to Luke's gospel, John is Jesus' cousin. And they are acquainted. Depending on what scholar we go with or what theories we go with, they certainly knew each other from their passing ministries, but some believe that they actually had a co-ministry for a time and that they were working together. And so Jesus and John would have been fairly well acquainted with one another. Let's put it that way, most likely. So let's jump into Matthew's Gospel, chapter 14. Let's look at verses 13 to 21, and we'll talk about it a little bit. Now, when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a deserted place by himself. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the towns. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion for them and cured their sick. When it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a deserted place, and the hour is now late. Send the crowds away so they may go into the villages and buy food for themselves." Jesus said to them, "They need not go away. You give them something to eat." They replied, "We have nothing here but 5 loaves and 2 fishes." And he said, "Bring them here to me." Then he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and blessed and broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. And all ate and were filled, and they took up what was left over of the broken pieces, 12 baskets full. And those who ate were about 5,000 men, besides women and children. Okay, so here Matthew flat out tells us that this is just the men. And so there's at least 3 times that many people here, no doubt. So you would have many women, you would have many children there. So you're probably talking more likely in the range of 15,000 people. Of course, kids don't probably eat as much as the grown-ups, but nonetheless, this is a lot of people to feed. And so typically we look at this in 2 different ways. And then I'm going to talk about a third thing that really we can get from Matthew's chronology of events here, as he has the sequence of occurrences in his gospel. So normally the traditional way is to look at the miracle of the multiplying of the loaves. It was an actual miracle that they divide these bread and they just keep respawning, basically, if we want to look at it with a word we use it for in gamers. They just come back. They grow into a solid loaf. You tear the loaf in half, and you got 2 big loaves. Instead of 1 loaf, you have 2. That's the traditional way of looking at it. And same with the fish. You divide the fish, and it keeps multiplying. Divide and multiply. And this is a miracle. This is a beginning of here we went from doing parables to now we go into a series of miracles here in chapter 14. So this is the first one. So that's the traditional way. The other way it's often looked at as that Jesus has convinced these folks to share what they have, that some of them have brought food on their journey, and he's convinced them all to pool their resources so that all might eat, and not just those that had brought food. So that's not any less miraculous in that Jesus has imparted such great empathy to all these folks that they truly care about each other. That caring for one another, that's the miracle there, some believe. That's usually the 2 different ways that the feeding miracles are viewed, both the feeding of the 5,000 and the 4,000. Here, though, we have an interesting transition from the story about Jesus being told about John's death and hear this story, and that's verse 13. Now, when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a deserted place by himself. And then it says, but when the crowds heard it, they followed on foot from the towns. But if we stopped at that by himself, which is in NRSV has that as one sentence. Now when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a deserted place by himself. Jesus has just heard about this man that he has this relationship with, his relative, and perhaps has been a working relationship. They have a bond there, and now he's found that he has been brutally killed for a very frivolous reason. And again, back to that whole thing about they've killed him because he was telling them what they didn't want to hear. People are going to kill you, metaphorically, hopefully not literally, when you tell them what they don't want to hear. But Jesus is in deep sorrow, and so he has gone off by himself. He's left the disciples behind, apparently, it would seem. But the disciples apparently follow him as well, because they're saying by himself, but yet the disciples show up. And he's gone off to mourn. He's in pain. He's in agony. He's distraught over this personal loss that he has. Jesus is fully human, remember. And so he is in deep sorrow over the loss of his dear friend and relative, John. But yet, something happens. When the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the towns. When he comes ashore, he sees this crowd of people that have come out to him for healing, predominantly it seems, as well as his teachings. But it looks like it's because of the sick and the ill that he has compassion. He had compassion for them and cured their sick. They've drugged these ill people out there because they believe he can help. And even though he himself is suffering, even though he himself is in the anguish of loss, he reaches inside and pulls out the compassion and continues on. And he heals these folks, and then he preaches to these folks, and then he feeds these folks. And the message there, the moral of the story for us, the life application that we can take is that, yeah, we're always, guess what? You're almost always going to be wounded in this world, it seems. It especially seems that way when you're a pastor. That's one of the downsides to being a pastor. Someone's always taking pot shots at you. Someone's always trying to make, it seems like whether they're doing it purposefully or for whatever, trying to do something that makes it difficult for you. But it's that way for all of us, not just the pastors. That's that way for Jesus. But yet, in spite of that, he reaches down and remembers that his job, our job, is in spite of our own pain, to help others. That's what I see here at the beginning of the feeding of the 5,000. And it's a point that's really quite often, if not always, missed, in my opinion. So that's what I'm going to leave you with. Maybe a little different slant on the feeding of the 5,000. I don't know. Let me know if you like that or not below in the comments. If you enjoy these videos, please like and subscribe. Come back and see us again. We'd love to have you here. Share these videos. We'd love to have more folks. We appreciate that. All the help is greatly appreciated. And if you have a nice comment, don't be mean. Make a nice comment down below. We'd love to hear from you too. All right. With that, this is Friday. It's actually my day off, so that's all I'm going to give you today. All right, have a very blessed day, and please, please, please be a blessing to someone today. See you later. God bless.